next, please welcome Carrie Baker, President of Brand and Commercial for Canada Goose. Carrie will be interviewed by Kirsty McGregor, Executive European Editor of Vogue Business.
We stopped short of doing a product demonstration, didn't we? Because we thought that parkas might not be quite the right thing for under these bright lights, but maybe next time. Hi everyone, we are here with Carrie today, who joined Canada Goose in 2012, and since then it really has become such an amazing globally recognized brand. She became president in 2022 and oversees the commercial and marketing teams globally. And Canada Goose has just released some amazing Q4 results, double-digit growth notably in the direct-to-consumer channel, and part of that is because of the store expansion program and really enhancing and amplifying the kind of experience that people are having in stores. So that is what we're going to talk about today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to talk about the strategy that you guys have in terms of putting people first alongside the product, of course. So kick us off by talking us through why that's so important for the brand.
It's really, we see it as a competitive advantage. Of course, you have to have great product. Of course, you have to have beautiful environments. But when you think about luxury retail and what makes the difference between a sale and a browse, a return and an exchange, a first visit, an only visit, or a repeat customer, it comes down to the people that you employ. And so it's tempting to think about sales associates just being sales engines or just as labor. And the way we've framed how we employ people, what we even call them. We call them brand ambassadors.
Yeah, I like that.
And the reason we do that is they're just as important as picking the celebrity endorsement that you're going to have for your next campaign or who your athlete is that's going to wear your product. They are the ones who are meeting your customers. They're making that difference, of course, from a transaction perspective, but from an experience and an emotional experience. And that's particularly important when you think about luxury retail. These are expensive items that you're going to purchase. They're investment items. So it's not just a quick transaction. It's a connection, and they're motivated by that connection versus a commission.
And in particular with Canada Goose, they're luxury items, they are also performance items, right?
Yes.
So I assume that your retail colleagues, they need to know, the brand ambassadors need to really be able to explain that and tell a real story that in a way that perhaps other brands don't have to.
They do, and when we first started, so we've barely been a retailer for a decade, not even with our first stores. And when we first hired people, we were very much about outerwear, very function first. Since then, our product line has expanded so much, right? We're now relevant in spring and in summer and rain and in heat. And so now it's a much more, the people that we hire and what we train them, it's about a lifestyle. They have to really engage to find out what that person is looking for. And so our job is to make sure that they know what that is, of course. So programs like gear testing, not just putting a uniform on somebody, making sure they have a chance to go in some extreme environment. If it's testing a new spring line, they're out there first. They have to be the endorsers of it. And so our programs are very much oriented around making sure they know the product, as well as equally important, I would say maybe arguably more important, is them understanding the brand, because they're the culture, right? When you think about a store, it's not just a physical space. Somebody can just go online. You're going into a store to have an experience, to engage with someone. And so one of the programs that we did, which they love, we started it last year, was bringing select groups from each region that we operate in up to Churchill, Manitoba. So if anyone knows Churchill, Manitoba, very northern Canada, it's polar bear capital of the world.
Okay.
And so we have a long-standing relationship with Polar Bears International, which they do conservation efforts around sea ice and environmental to make sure that polar bears have an environment in where they can live. We also have product that we call our PVI product. So bringing them there up to that environment to see the conservation efforts that we're a part of, to see scientists in action, to see polar bears, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and experience that they then bring back to their individual store. They're excited, they can better speak to the product, the energy is there.
Yeah.
It's so different than teaching them how to close a sale.
How do you make sure that you're taking on board any feedback that you get from your brand ambassadors and operationalizing that in the head office? Are there any examples you could offer?
Tons.
Okay.
It's a weekly, daily, if not weekly. Our ambassadors are not shy. They take their ambassadorial role very seriously. So, of course, there's official program or forums where they can share, what inventory is missing, how could I have closed a sale,
Sure.
but more meaningful feedback, of course, meaningful feedback on product. Footwear would be an example of, what's missing in our line. So, footwear, we entered the footwear business a few years ago, and it was always part of our long-term product roadmap, but it was their insistence saying, I've got lots of customers coming in and asking about this.
Okay.
Could we do it sooner? Here's the types of products I think we should start with. And so that was a meaningful catalyst for us to get into the business faster and meaningful. Other things like, we used to be very separate of operations roles and experience roles, so people on the floor selling and people doing the back of house.
Okay.
What we realized was the people in back of house, and this is realization from them telling us, they love the product, they know it, they're handling it every minute of every day, and so they would want to come on the floor and also sell. And so we started changing the way we think about how we divvy up the time that they're doing, the jobs that they're doing when they're in the store, and even what those roles are. So that was a meaningful difference to who we hire, how we train, and how we keep that energy alive in the store.
Amazing. And sort of to flip that last question on its head, presumably you spend some time on the shop floor, as do the rest of the leadership, I imagine. So tell me how you make sure that you're taking sort of learnings from that in a meaningful way back to head office.
We do. Not enough, never enough. Too much time in a boardroom needs to shift to more time on the shop floor. But big realizations, I'm trying to think. The last time we did it, we did it was sort of a bonding moment for our executive team to come in, and on the same day, we all went to a different store in whatever region we were in. And you had to come away with true learnings and what are you going to change as a result of it. Okay. And so one of the big observations, whether someone was in back of house, whether they're at cash, whether they were the host who greeted people in the store, was that we were making it too complicated. So too many systems for someone to have to check inventory, check someone out, register a customer profile, go to the back, find labor hours. And so that spurred a major simplification effort on our behalf to say, how do we pare this down? How do we make it better, easier, faster for them to do their job without having to be, going in so many different directions? Because the biggest thing we want them is to be in front of a customer. I want them to be, luxury is about telling a story and sharing experience rather than just making a transaction.
Yeah, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds of things and forget to take that step back and be the consumer and step into their shoes and have that customer journey for a while. When we were talking before, you mentioned the Ottawa store, and it sounds like they've sort of found an interesting way to kind of overcome the challenge of the location. Tell us about that and how they've managed to make clienteling work for them.
Yeah, so this is a great example of our brand ambassadors owning our values. So one of our key values is entrepreneurship. And so we look at our store managers as they own their business. They own that experience that they own the team. And so we have a great store manager in their store in Ottawa, which is in Canada, if you guys don't know that. And not so north as Churchill, but fairly far north. And it's not a high traffic mall. It's a great location. We have great customers. They've built up an amazing clientele, but it's not a busy mall where you're just benefiting from the passerbys. So that store manager really took it upon herself to create events, find a reason to hold an event, whether it's a shop and sip, whether it's a brand new color, and they would do a whole event around color and bring back some clientele that they had met once, twice, as a way to again, develop that relationship. They didn't need direction from corporate or head office. They didn't get permission. It was just, I'm going to do what's best for my business. And in that store in particular, clienteling represents over 40% of their business.
That's amazing. So how do you then take that approach and perhaps look at how you could scale it or employ it in other stores, certainly?
Yeah, I think it starts with behavior. Of course, the easy answer is to say technology, automate it. Absolutely, definitely want to do that. But if it doesn't start with the behavior, again, of us investing in that time to say, this is what we want an experience in a Canada Goose store to be like. This is what your control is over the environment. This is your ability. And rewarding that. So you talked about we had a great quarter, we've had a great year. It does pay off immediately. When you train people, conversion goes up. We saw that dramatically. We saw, as you talked about, like our comp store sales immediately went up. So when you give them that permission and then follow that with really interesting and great training, like we talked about, their world is their oyster. So we have to celebrate that. And so it's really then doing that at scale means how do you make it more efficient through technology? How do you make it sure it becomes like inherent into when they hire new people? So that is our focus.
I want to come back to the tech point, but just on you're painting such a lovely picture of like kind of walking into a Canada Goose store and you know, really that sort of culture of warmth and passion from people that work there. But as you expand, and global expansion is, you know, a big part of the strategy, how are you finding that the in-store expectations perhaps differ across different markets? So, you know, it might be, I assume it's quite different from North America to Asia to Europe. Yeah. So talk us through how you're kind of approaching some of those differences.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the same, is that expectations are high, right? When you are selling a very high-priced luxury product, people expectations go up. They're not just looking for a quick sock. You know, they're looking for something that's going to last a lifetime. So that is consistent globally. What's different is the way in which we deliver. So our service approach to selling is called Canadian Warmth. No surprise, we're an outerwear brand born in the deep cold. Yeah. But the idea is not protection. The idea is I want you to have a connection. I want you to feel something when you leave our store. I want you to feel like you want to come back, that maybe you know that brand ambassador and that you might engage them again. And so the way in which you do that in Asia is much more formal than it would be in very, you know, North America, Western, we're very casual. Hey, how are you? Welcome to the store. What can I help you with? In Asia, it's much more, how may I be of service? Right. And a little bit more reserved, wait for them to find their bearings, and then you engage. So knowing all of, Europe is also different. You know, when you think about the types of people that are coming into the store or how they're coming in a store as families, they require a few more spaces, you know, whether it's a VIP room, whether it's a little salon. So the way in which you offer them and come and sit down and enjoy yourself before you go to the hard sell. Whereas I think in North America, it's a little much more on the nose.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the Toronto store. Yeah. Because it was sort of act as a bit of an experimental store for an approach where at one point you had no inventory in the store, and I know that at the time that was like crazy. A lot of headlines around, you know, store with no inventory. Now possibly not quite so like, you know, hard to imagine, but it was a bold step. What were the learnings from that Toronto store, and, you know, how has it changed? Because it does have inventory now, you were telling me.
Yes,
so
it does.
It has changed a bit.
So I'll tell you the story. So we have 3 stores in Toronto. It's our headquarters. Our first store was in Yorkdale. Our second store was in more like a suburban mall. And so what we wanted to do was test a different format, test something that would be something that we really learn from, not just, hey, what is the right layout? Yeah. So we went in with a very experiential store. I talk a lot about, you'll hear me say experiential a lot because it's so important to us. And so it was designed to be this digital-first experiential store where we had no inventory, which sounds crazy for a store because people want to buy stuff. We want them to buy things. Yeah. But the idea was that come in, be guided by one of our brand ambassadors, and have this immersion into the world of Canada Goose. So it was sensorial. The ice cracks when you walk over the floor. There's LED lights that show the northern lights. We have a cold room there. You walk in, you try on the jacket, you understand what it means to feel not minus 25. The idea was that you're immersed in this, and then you could quickly check out, and we delivered anywhere in the same day. What we found was people love the experience. They still do. That has not changed. But they want to leave with something tangible after having this incredible experience. Okay. They want not a token or a souvenir, but something that feels tangible rather than the convenience of we'll ship it anywhere. It didn't seem to matter as much as I'm so impressed, I love it, I want to walk home with it and feel it. And so we've changed that. We now do have inventory in the store. But things we learned were obviously that, but also the experience does matter. We don't want every store to have a cold room or a snow room. We don't want every store to be this sort of Disney world of experiences, but how do we connect that feeling, again, that luxury feel that I love Canada Goose, I love my brand ambassador, into every store? So that's some of the learnings that we've taken to all our stores, Asia, North America.
So you have cold rooms in other stores now, right?
We do. We have cold rooms and we have snow rooms. So that was also an iteration. So one is you go in and you just feel the cold, it's freezing. It's a great place for selfies. And again, it's a fun way to make your product come to life and to communicate your brand proposition. But it was also a meaningful sales difference of people that went in to visit the cold room and tried on a product and convert versus people who just went into a change room or didn't go into any room. So again, it has a very tangible business impact. The 2.0 version was a snow room where it actually every night you'll see new snow on the ground. It's fresh, and I mean in places where they've never seen or they don't have snow. They might have seen it, but they don't have it in that local market. It's a differentiator for them to, again, have an emotional connection.
It follows through with some of what we've seen with Haider coming in as creative director, I think, as well, and some of the actual experiences of taking people out. And, so I guess it's the closest thing that a lot of customers are going to get to being in that environment of Iceland or somewhere else,
That's right.
I wanted to come back then to the tech question, because you're clearly not anti-tech, even though people are very firmly at the center of the strategy. So talk us through in a bit more detail how tech currently supports the people within the business and enhances their roles. And then maybe we can talk about, kind of what might be next.
Yes, so we do see tech, we're definitely not anti-tech. We love tech. Our chief digital officer is amazing. We have a great roadmap. I think the lens in which we look at it is a lot about, will this make them do their jobs better? Not just faster, because that's, of course, one measure, efficiency, ease of use, but will it make their engagement with the customer better? And will it be, will it whisper versus shout, right? We don't want tech that shouts, other than the experimental store that we did. We didn't want it to shout. We want it to be an enabler of the people, because that's, again, where I really see the magic coming through. So things like, Omni was a game changer for us. You don't have the right color, you can still get someone to try on the product, but then again, help them through their online purchase and it gets delivered to their home or their hotel. Another example in Asia would be WeCom or WeChat. It's an amazing app for them to be able to still have a one-on-one connection with their customers, but it's seamless to the customer. They're not really noticing. It's just a way for them to clientele.
Yeah.
But on the back end, they're seeing what were the previous purchases, why did they like them, who were they buying it for, when's their birthday, what can I do with that? So it's this enabler, again, of that relationship.
What role do you think AI is playing now or will play in the future in terms of frontline retail?
I'm really excited about AI. I'm by no means an expert, but we're really excited. And again, as long as it's an enabler rather than a replace. And I don't think anyone is assuming that we're going to replace brand ambassadors, but I think anything, predictive analytics in terms of inventory, who's coming into the store, based on who used to come into the store, who is now coming, what are they going to look for? Anything that makes them better and faster and be able to get to the answer and they can bring it to life better is going to be a great thing.
And how else are you using AI in the business at the moment? Is it helping with sort of the back end efficiencies as well?
We're still in early stages. The part I get really excited about is in the inventory part. So, when you think about your merchandising teams and your planning and allocation teams, making that typically in most companies, I think everyone has a little bit of fear that they're the only ones who are doing it manually. And I think in talking to my peers, most of us are not where we want to be and where we think AI can play such a big role in just eliminating the guesswork or getting you far enough so that you can make a very strong decision without having to do the full bottoms up or manual. It's really about the automation of it.
We were talking yesterday about, I was talking to a couple of people about there's still some reticence, I think, around tech and AI coming into things like frontline retail. I think people are still quite worried that it might in some way replace that human touch. And I wonder if actually what we're going to see is just much more appreciation for what you're describing, which is, the brand ambassadors who really know the brand and can translate the culture with those tools supporting them.
I do. I think, when you think about training for store staffs, the speed at which it can process the information and deliver it in a compelling way, that's an exciting area rather than, having big, crazy large teams spending hours and hours and you're not getting it to them in real time. Retail is detail, so the faster you can get them all of those details, and I think AI can play a meaningful part in that.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to seeing what the rest of the store expansion looks like and hopefully experiencing one of these colder snow rooms at some point, because that sounds great fun. But thank you so much for joining us today, Carrie.
Thank you.